Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and as you can see, I actually have a nice light in the background, so that's pretty cool. And also, I'm trying to edit in photos, so hopefully, new year, even better quality for these videos, so hopefully you enjoy. But let's get started. Finally, an average amount of books this week, which is about 12 books this week, so 13 books actually. So, number 13 for me, I really didn't like this issue, and that was Miles Morales: The End, issue 1. I haven't been reading this series, so I jumped into it because it's the end. I do like Miles Morales a lot. I just haven't been enjoying this volume, so I dropped it a little while ago, and I was like, hey, let's see how Miles Morales' story ends. And we have a couple of stories we're going to see with this. I think Venom's up next week. Captain Marvel's one of them, I know. So I'm going to probably pick up, like, Captain Marvel, some series that I do follow. But, yeah, Miles. I love him, so I wanted to see what was up, and I just couldn't get into the story, and honestly, mostly because of the artwork. It's very blocky, not my style, and it took me out of the story completely. I just didn't care. I just couldn't get into it. It's this futuristic world. He ends up dying in the end, which is pretty predictable, and there just wasn't a lot of heart in this one. So overall, I'm going to give Miles Morales: The End, issue 1. 1 star, actually. I didn't really like much about the issue, so just wasn't my thing. So that was number 13. Moving on to number 12, which is Young Justice issue 12. So Young Justice, this has to focus on the Wonder Comics world. So we get to see the Wonder Twins, we get to see the Young Justice team, Naomi, and then Dial H in the end. I actually like that part a lot. I like that we get to see these characters that we've been following and how they would interact with each other. But I thought it was very wordy, this issue. I couldn't really quite get into the dialogue. I thought it jumped a lot, didn't quite care about the plot and the woman that they're trying to go up against. So, overall, I wasn't a huge fan of this issue, but I liked the idea of it, and there were some character interactions I did enjoy with it. So, overall, I'm going to give this 2.5 stars, and that is Young Justice issue 12. And I'm seeing that you do see glare with the comic, with the lighting. Sorry about that. But I have images now, so don't worry about the glare. Alright, moving on to number 11, which is Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, issue 5, which we have one more issue for this series. So I actually thought it was a 5-issue miniseries. I thought it was going to end with this one, but we do have one more issue. And honestly, it's just not quite going anywhere, and that's been my disappointment. I do like these two characters. I don't understand what DC's idea of their relationship is, though, because like in previous issues it's been confirmed that they're in a romantic relationship with each other, but it doesn't feel talked about in this issue at all. It just kind of feels like they're completely avoiding it, and even in the promotions they've had, like friends going on a road trip, it's like, but they're together, so why are we not talking about this? Especially Batwoman guest stars. You want to see some conversation about that. So I don't know what their relationship is, and I think that's a shame for Harley and Poison Ivy, and getting into the root of what makes them cool together. So yeah, overall, it just, every issue's kind of felt like a filler to me. I don't know if this had to be as long of a miniseries, or again, maybe just a bigger plot for this story. But the artwork is really good overall. I do like that, and I do like the interactions. I just feel like they could be doing so much more with this series that they're just not tapping into. So overall, I'm going to give Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy issue 5 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. So we're moving on to number 10. And this is a book I was debating on getting, but I ended up getting it because it was like a moderate amount of books this week. It wasn't like too heavy, so I was like, all right, let me try it out. And that was Star issue 1. So Star is a connection to Captain Marvel, and I've been enjoying Captain Marvel. I love Kelly Thompson's writing, so I want to try it out. And there was a little teaser on Twitter like a couple of weeks ago where Kelly Thompson shows Star and Jessica Jones hanging out with each other, and that was a lot of fun, where they talk about which Jessica is friends with Captain Marvel, and that they share custody. And I thought that was a lot of fun and funny in general. So they are both best friends with Carol. And Star obviously isn't, because the story is about Star being a villain, having the reality stone in her, and hating Captain Marvel because she almost killed her, and kind of having a bit of PTSD because of it. So she's trying to find her role of what to do with this stone. She interacts with a lot of Marvel heroes to do so, and in the end, she meets up with Scarlet Witch, which makes a lot of sense with the reality stone. So I will say, if you're a fan of Infinity Gauntlet or any of this, the stone/gem storylines, then I think you'll enjoy this issue, or if you like this character from Captain Marvel. But for me, I never really liked this character. I never was able to connect with her. I didn't really understand why she was getting a miniseries. Now I kind of do, because again, it's like past her. It's more about the gems. But yeah, I haven't been able to connect to this character, even though I think this issue has done a better job than obviously the ongoing, because you have just fully about Star. But I just haven't been able to connect with her, and I wish I could. I do like the artwork a lot with this one, though. It's really sleek, but I don't think it gave me enough to get issue 2. So Star issue 1 gets 3 stars, and that is number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, which is Buffy the Vampire Slayer issue... What are we up to? Issue 11. So Buffy, this issue was solicited as a Rose, Cordelia, and Kendra team up. And I think Willow was in the mix. And it looks like they're shifting that to the next issue, this all-female team, because there's all these guys being taken over by the Hellmouth, it seems like, and they are going to go up against them. But Cordelia is not in this issue at all, which is disappointing, because, I mean, I'm a hardcore Cordelia fan, so I definitely wanted to see her. But this issue, I enjoyed some of the character beats here. I liked Willow and Xander just totally spilling out their feelings and, you know, dealing with sharing a soul together. And some hints of Willow's witchness was cool. And also Rose dealing with her breakup with Willow. I think there's some good character beats there. The Kendra and Robin thing was interesting. So the character beats I thought were good. I just don't know where Hellmouth is going, and I don't think there's been enough explanation of what it is, what's controlling them. Buffy's out. God knows what she's doing. We'll find out in the last issue of Hellmouth. I just feel like this crossover came way too soon and honestly takes away from some of the character moments. But I guess on the flip side, I do like that they're focusing more on the supporting characters because we don't have Buffy. They're kind of holding on the series, and they are all strong enough to do so. And like I said, there's some interesting emotions overall. But why this is a little lower? I'm not a fan of the art. You know, I know this has been a while now. This has been the same artist. But yeah, Dan Mora, who has this really sleek, still cartoony art. And then we have David, who's a little bit more, I think it's David Lopez, I believe, who is a bit more cartoonier. And I just don't love his eye work. The eyes always look very buggy, and everyone's like overreacts in a way. So I also think the inking's very bold. So I'm not a huge fan of the artwork, and that kind of takes away from some of the emotions here. So overall, I'm going to give Buffy Hellmouth crossover. I think we have one more issue after this, and I'm going to give that 3.5 stars. Not a bad issue at all. Just, I'm excited for this crossover to be over. All right, moving on to number 8, which is Witchblade, issue 17. I feel like this doesn't come out every month. I might be wrong, but it doesn't feel like it does. But usually Witchblade's kind of on the bottom side of the list, but I would say it's kind of like Outcast, where like every 10 issues there's a pretty solid issue in there. And I like this franchise, which is why I've been continuing to read it. And I like Alex as a character a lot. I love her, well, I don't love her PTSD, but I love how they explore her PTSD in this series. And when it grounds itself, it's where it's really great, because Alex here, we get to see what her life was a little bit before the Witchblade, how desperate she is to get a hold of it. So I thought that was really interesting, and we got to see Alex as Alex and didn't focus on all these supporting characters. I will say there's some emotional resonance that doesn't quite land because of maybe some rushingness of the issue. Like there's one character that just dies in the end, and Alex is like, yeah, it was kind of sad that she died. Oh well, let's move on. There's like a 1 page to talk about it, and they don't really talk about her again. Has she killed anybody? Like, I feel like that would have been a huge thing, especially because we saw that character for most of the issue. They were kind of connecting. She slept on her couch, so there definitely was moments that I feel like would have been bigger for that. But overall, I like her control to try to get the Witchblade again. The history that they're trying to do with the mythos of the Witchblade's interesting. Artwork is always really solid for this book as well. So Witchblade issue 17 gets 3.5 stars. Definitely one of the better issues I've read of the series in a while. So that was number 8. So we're moving on to number 7, which is the Immortal Hulk, issue 29, which is a pretty solid issue. Artwork, as always, is haunting and great, and I love the slow pacing of the artwork with some of the character beats, especially Betty. I love the opening where Betty and Leonard, they're just talking, and he's eating his little french fries, talking about Bruce and Joe and the Immortal Hulk and how they're all connected. And Betty's kind of bored because she's like, all right, I know all this shit. I know all this stuff about him. And then Bruce comes in just to, like, say nothing, pretty much. Just say, hey, I'm around. And then Betty totally transforms into her harpy side, her monster. And I thought that was really cool and shows how she's connected to her Hulk form and where the anger comes from. So I love that as a Betty fan. And then I like the political aspect that this is going towards too. Like, I like the journalist character where the editor is like, you might be too close to this, and how the journalist is kind of buying into Hulk's ideas and saying, no, they're not wrong. This is true. This is something I believe in. And the editor is like, you probably shouldn't be on this project if you don't really have a objective opinion about this. So you might have to be off this article. And then in the end, there's all these monsters, so it's definitely an action-packed issue, and we get to see that villain, who I don't know his name, and he is the one who brings all the monsters together to try to defeat Hulk, which is kind of interesting. Brings in the action of the issue where it's more of a talking heads issue in a good way. So I thought I had a good mix of action, had a good mix of politics, some good character beats overall. It's a slower burn, but I enjoyed it. So I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is The Amazing Mary Jane, issue 4. So this issue I thought was probably one of the better issues of The Amazing Mary Jane. I love that Mary Jane becomes Spider-Man in this issue, because the other Spider-Man that they casted he quit. And Mary Jane's like, I guess I could be Spider-Man. They're like, how's that work? And they're able to do it through, like, CGI that she could be Spider-Man. And it's just a lot of fun as a Spider-Man fan. But also MJ's kind of dealing with some more emotional stuff where she's like, I gotta tell Peter I'm working with Mysterio. So that's gonna be an issue. And she doesn't get the chance to tell him. So when he finds out, that's gonna rock the boat a bit. But overall, I like the art. I like when it focuses on the movie. I think that's where this book is at its best. When it goes to the Sinister Six, I'm like, this is just here to bring the action and bring the Spider-Man aspect to it. But I think you could just have the movie and it'll be so much stronger. I think it would have a better direction. So I like the art. I love Mary Jane in this book. I do think plot-wise it still needs to figure itself out a bit, but it's overall a fun issue and a fun book. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number, I think, 6. All right, moving on to number 5, which is Batman issues 86. So this is the new run of Batman. This is James Tynion's run, Tom King's run. I mean, you can watch my other videos to hear my thoughts on what I thought about that. But I think James does a really good job at owning into what worked with King's run. It's not like Catwoman's ridden away. It's not like Alfred's death is ridden away. He really does piggyback on Catwoman still being involved, Bruce dealing with the death of his father figure. And I like that. I think that's where the issue was at its strongest, actually, is especially when Bruce dealt with Alfred, where he thought Alfred was still around. I thought was cool. And then the small moments we get to see with Catwoman and Batman working together, it doesn't overtake the book, but it's still there. And I think that's when Batman's at its best, when it can kind of balance all that. So artwork, man. Artwork is so good for this book. It's classic Batman, especially because this series is focusing a bit more on the villains. You could definitely tell that you have Cheshire, you got Deathstroke in this issue, you got a lot of villains, you got an epilogue, and I'm sure the epilogue will keep teasing about the Joker. So, but also that was kind of the negative for me of this issue, is that I thought they were trying to fit too many villains, and the plot kind of felt like generic Batman, but maybe that's what we need, because we had a story that wasn't generic Batman. Maybe we want to go back to the roots of what Batman was and just see his villains. So I'll see how that plays out. But that was kind of what I was least interested in, was the overall plot of the, all these villains coming into play. But I liked the character beats for this issue and the direction it's taking with Bruce developing a new Gotham and trying to be better. And it kind of has a similar theme to King, where it's like, hey, does Gotham need a Batman anymore? And it's going to be his own journey to figure that out if he can make Gotham better as Bruce Wayne instead of Batman. And I thought that was pretty cool. So Batman issue 86 gets 4 stars, and that's number 5. I'm going to take a sip of water, and then we'll move on to number 4. Okay, number 4 for me is Power Rangers TMNT issue 2. And as you guys know, I'm a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan. I know the bare minimum about the franchise, but I've been really enjoying this series. And this issue, I thought, did a really good job at introducing both franchises really well. I will say it's a tiny bit crowded because you do have a lot of characters in this issue, but I love the separate interactions. So we get to see, like, Kimberly and April, of all people, interacting, and then different turtles interacting with different Rangers. So I like that, and I like seeing their personalities kind of jump off each other. And then the end was pretty big for this issue, where we get to see Rita teaming up with Shredder, and Shredder's the new Green Ranger. So that was pretty cool. And then we got the Rocksteady characters again. I'm not a big TMNT fan, but I know who they are. Bebop and Rocksteady. They're like comedic characters. So it's cool to see them in Rita's kind of like layer, her evil layer, where they kind of fit in with the other villains there. So I thought that was cool. But yeah, that cliffhanger was crazy. I'm like, I like how this is melding into both these mythologies. But I thought what was really cool about this issue is how it really expresses how the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hide. They hide to be ninjas and be superheroes, and then the Power Rangers, they hide in plain sight. The big part of their story is that they can't reveal who they are. So it's interesting to see their different dynamics as superheroes and how that comes together, especially in April's point of view as a journalist and in media. I thought that little small scene was really interesting to see the themes of both teams coming together. And artwork, I will say that this issue was a little bit darker for me, so it was a little muddier because of the coloring and because there were so many characters, but I still do think it fits pretty well because we are in the darker side of this universe. We are in the TMNT side of the story, so Power Rangers, of course, would be a bit brighter if we were there. But yeah, I like the issue a lot. I thought it was really solid, and if you like these two franchises, I think you're going to get the most out of it. But if you just like one of them, I think you're going to still really enjoy this. As a Power Rangers fan, I really enjoy it, and I know I've talked to people that aren't Power Rangers fans, and just like TMNT, are also really enjoying it. So I think both sides get a lot, and it's very new reader friendly if you don't know either franchise. So I would say you just need to know the bare minimum of both. So I'm going to give that 4 stars, and that is number 4. And that's Power Rangers TMNT issue 2. Moving on to number 3, which is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 37. Much higher than it has been. So The Amazing Spider-Man, I did not love the last arc, but it finally kind of gets to a new reboot in its own way, where Spider-Man is just figuring out how to live day by day. It's a story we've seen with Spider-Man many times, but in a new way, where he has technology to kind of see the future for, I guess, a few seconds. It's very similar to Civil War 2, but they make a reference to it, and you're like, okay, this is the reason why it's not Civil War 2. So you kind of look over it. And Spider-Man's having a good time with it. He's able to do everything he wants. He has the date with MJ kind of on the phone, and then he falls asleep. So obviously, this is not going to work out, right? So it works out for this issue. The whole story is going to crumble. We all know that's going to end up happening, but you want to know how. And how Kindred's involved. Because in the end, you got more of this ominous talk of, I know you, Peter, and I know your weaknesses, and then they bring up some older villains in the end of this story. So overall, I thought it was really solid. I love that Ryan Ottley's back. I think his artwork really fits well for this story. I love Nick Spencer's humor. I love the lightness of this issue, and I think it was a really good setup issue for where it's going to go. And yes, it's a story we've seen before, but I think with enough twists to make it original. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Miss Marvel, issue 11. Second best issue of this run thus far. I enjoyed this because it goes back to the roots of what we love about Miss Marvel. She kind of talks about a bigger idea, which is like identity, right? In this issue, where she goes up against her costume and saying, you are your own worst enemy. And literally, you are your own worst enemy here. And she's fighting herself, which makes sense with the themes of what the story is going through, where she's dealing with a lot of emotional baggage. She has her best friend that she kissed, she has her dad in the hospital, so she's just trying to juggle it all. And obviously still trying to deal with villains and being Miss Marvel. And what I had fun with is just her not being Miss Marvel in this issue, where she's trying to be the superhero without a costume. And we get to see these this couple come up to her and say, oh, I love you, you're Miss Marvel. And there's this one moment where she just has to like change her face, and it was hysterical. And then she takes like their glasses and their scarf to cover herself. So I thought it was just a really fun issue, just playing with fun superhero tropes, and very Spider-Man-like with this kind of symbiote costume taking over control for Miss Marvel. And we'll see what ends up happening to Kamala. She's not in a really great place by the end, and the suit wants to kill all her villains, and that means Josh as well, which we know has a personal connection to Kamala. So I'm curious to see where they're going to take that with the next issue. So overall, that was really solid. Artwork was really good too. Really solid stuff. So giving that 4 stars. Moving on to number 1, which is Ghost Spider issue 6. I love this cover too by Greg Land. So this issue was so much fun. We get to see kind of the slice of life side of Gwen first, where we get to see Gwen interacting with her band. They're going reality jumping, multiverse jumping, and Gwen's friends are like, oh, this is why it's cool to be friends with a superhero. And they still give her a hard time, and in all good fun. And I love that. It's just a lot of fun just seeing the Mary Janes again, and them just interacting and playing with her superhero side in a different way. And Gwen trying to take responsibility, saying, hey, I can't be out late. I gotta go to school tomorrow. But of course, she's gonna be up late, because we get to see her also interact with her dad, who is dealing with a hostage situation, which I love their banter, especially in this world where everyone knows Gwen is Spider-Gwen or Ghost Spider. So it's cool to kind of play with the dual identity, where they're fighting with each other as Ghost Spider and father as Captain Stacy, but really it's just daughter and father fighting in front of the police. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And by the end, we get to see this interesting, bigger plot line with the Fantastic Four. So we get to see Sue and Johnny are pretty much the Kardashians of this world, and they were lost like 5 years ago, and now they're found. And Gwen makes this reference in the beginning where they say, where she says that, everyone in the multiverse are either older than you, younger than you, dead, or maybe even superheroes. And most of the time, the Fantastic Four, or Sue and Johnny, are superheroes. So they seem like kind of like the Jersey Shore type, where they're like, oh, we grew up with that, we love that trash television. And now Gwen's like, okay, I guess she's got to do something with this. She doesn't know the information by the end, but obviously by the end, or the next issue, I'm sure she will find out. I thought that was such an interesting twist on the siblings, because yeah, that's going to be cool to see fame and power and how that's going to play about, and how they're going to be different from the Fantastic Four we know, and how's this related to Reed, how's this related to Ben. So I thought this was a perfect issue of just fun spider antics, but also what I love about Spider-Gwen also is just playing with what we know about the Marvel Universe and putting their own spin on it. We've had the Captain America, we've had Venom, so let's see the Fantastic Four. What's that all about in this universe? So I had a ton of fun. There is a different artist on here, but really good art overall. I think it plays with the slice of life nature. It's sleek, it's neat, good action. Really like the artwork. Good replacement artist for the regular artist we usually get. Takashi, I believe, is his name. So Ghost Spider issue 6 gets 4.5 stars. I had a blast with this, and that's my number 1 pick. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what were your favorite issues, what were your least favorite issues, and everything in between. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Go check out my comics, Like Father, Like Daughter, and They Call Her the Dancer. And every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time is our comic book podcast, where we discuss our favorite comics and comic book news, so be sure to check that out as well. Thanks, guys. Bye.